Buhay. Thank you for coming early. We're waiting for other people. Maybe still on their way. Shall we start? All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and hope for you to have a very, very good day today. And I hope you had a great day yesterday. Actually, lovely to see you again. And I hope your dinner was good around the area. So today is another amazing day where we will learn more things. Our first panel discussion this morning is about climate change and sustainable procurement. We are delighted to have today several distinguished panelists who will share their experiences in promoting approaches to climate change, adaptation, and sustainable public procurement. Let me do the honor of introducing each and every one of them. She has held the role of Chief of Climate Change and Disaster Risk Management Thematic Group and the Principal Climate Change Specialist in the Pacific Department. In her current role, Noelle leads a team dedicated to expanding ADB's investments, climate adaptation, and low-carbon development in helping achieve ADB's ambitious climate finance commitments. Noelle has almost 30 years of experience working on climate change and the environment in Asia and Africa. We move on to Rustam Abdukayumov, Director of Procurement Division 2 at ADB. He oversees procurement and consulting services operations in East Asia, Southeast Asia, and Pacific countries. He has been with ADB for over 22 years and has rich experience in procurement large and complex turnkey, civil work, and supply contracts, as well as consulting contracts in all sectors of ADB operations. Attorney Rowena Ruiz. She's the Executive Director of the Philippine Government Procurement Policy Board and is champion of a more responsive, agile, and sustainable public procurement through data-driven policy recommendations, proactive capacity development program, and use of technology and data analytics in innovating procurement monitoring. In 2019, she pushed for the Philippines' application as an observer in the World Trade Organization Committee on Government Procurement, and is designated as the Philippine Observer Representative to this committee. She is also working on scaling up the existing Green Public Procurement Roadmap and specifications writing as tools for designing more sustainable procurement projects. Let's move on to Dr. Annabel Bradbury. She's the Director of International Development at Ricardo, a global engineering and consulting company based in the UK, which shares world-leading expertise covering climate mitigation and adaptation, green finance, sustainable transport, agriculture, air quality, energy decarbonization, and water resource management. Ricardo is highly experienced in working for ADB and other international financial institutions, supporting countries to implement their climate commitments under the Paris Agreement. To date, Ricardo has supported over 70 governments around the world with their climate action planning. Annabel has 25 years of experience managing and delivering projects for development partners, primarily across Africa and Asia, in transport. Antony Gibson. Antony is a water technology and project delivery expert from Ramboll, a global engineering, architecture, and consultancy company based in Denmark with more than 17,000 experts who help create sustainable solutions for governments and private companies all over the world. Antony has rich experience working with ADB projects in many countries across Southeast Asia. Those are the backgrounds of our dear panelists. Now let's move on to the question and answer. We will be raising one specific question per panelist, and should you have any questions, you may raise it again in the Events Air app, and we will try to, if we have enough time, we will raise as much as we can after the questions given to our panelists now. Noelle, we are aware that as part of implementation of Strategy 2030, ADB aims to become a regional leader in tackling climate change and plans to reach $100 billion of climate financing from its own resources by 2030. This is very ambitious objective. Could you please share with us ADB's initiatives to achieve the climate ambition that has been set out by ADB? Noelle?
Thank you very much, Gigi, and good morning, everybody. I'm pleased to be here today to talk to you about ADB's climate efforts, and I really just touch on a number of the key initiatives in this short time. So we've already, I think you'll already be aware of President Massa's announcement in 2021 for ADB to increase our climate finance ambition and for ADB to become the climate bank for Asia and the Pacific. Just want to touch on that. We still keep a focus on our mitigation efforts. Asia is responsible for almost 50% of all emissions. And so we feel that that focus on reducing those emissions over the next 10 years is a critical area of investment for us. But at the same time, we keep a focus of at least 1/3 of all investments being on adaptation. And so last year, we did have about 38% of our climate finance was adaptation focused. Climate change is also one of the 4 fundamental shifts under the new operating model, which will enable us to strengthen our position as the climate bank for Asia and the Pacific. We're about to complete our climate change action plan, which aims to scale up climate solutions through a combination of upstream, midstream, and downstream support over the period 2023 to 2030. Our expectation is that will be signed off within October and made available publicly by the end of November, so that will be available. We committed to Paris alignment by the 1st of July 2023 for all sovereign operations and 85% of non-sovereign operations. To date, we've undertaken assessments in over about 130 methodology, which is available through our website. We have a range of initiatives to scale up climate financing. I'll touch on some of those. Some of you may have heard of the Innovative Finance for Climate in Asia and the Pacific, IFCAP, which was launched in May 2022. The aim is to utilize grants and a leveraged guarantee mechanism to release a significant amount of ADB's capital and deliver up to 15 billion of additional transformational climate change projects and policy actions. We're also piloting the energy transition mechanism, which many of you will have heard of. This is a scalable collaborative initiative and partnership with DMCs to leverage a market-based approach to accelerate the transition from fossil fuels to clean energy. And it's bringing together a combination of public and private investments. We're currently in the process of negotiating the first deal in Indonesia, and hopeful that that may be possible to complete before the end of the year. On the adaptation side, we've established the Community Resilience Partnership Program, which aims to scale up investments in adaptation, and especially at the community level, targeting the nexus between climate change, poverty, and gender. With the support of the UKFCDO, French ADF, and French AFD, and the Nordic Development Fund, we have about $70 million of grant financing, and a new program going to the GCF board in October that would leverage about 120 million of finance for investments. So that's an important part of our work on adaptation. We, as you will know, we have long-standing experience in supporting our DMCs in accessing carbon finance through domestic, bilateral, and international carbon markets. And in 2021, we established the Climate Action Catalyst Fund to help mobilize carbon finance to support mitigation through the purchase of internationally transferred mitigation outcomes under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. We're in the final stages of mobilizing finance for the CACF and expect that fund to be operationalized in early 2024. Just moving along, you will be familiar with a lot of the efforts in investments, but we've also been scaling up our work on policy-based lending as a means to undertake critical policy reforms in the climate space. And in 2022, we approved the first dedicated climate change policy-based loan to support the Philippines implement policy reforms which were identified in its NDCs. We're currently in the process of working with the government of Bangladesh on a climate PBL, which may be approved before the end of the year, and also with the government of Mongolia on a PBL, which is addressing various policy instruments. Some of these are related to the overall climate architecture, some are related to climate in relation to national budgeting and planning systems, and then others support instruments in relation to mitigation or adaptation across a range of sectors. We're continuing our work with the major global climate funds. We succeeded in reaccreditation with the GCF and the Adaptation Fund in 2023. Just touching again on the adaptation side, we have that ambition of 34 billion of the 108 billion. So we're stepping up our engagement with DMCs on climate adaptation. We're supporting selected DMCs in translating national adaptation plans into investment pipeline to help bridge this gap between adaptation, planning, and financing. Our current NAP efforts are focused on the agriculture and natural resource sectors and converting those into investment pipeline, which we hope to see reflected in ADB's investment pipeline, and also other MDB and bilateral investment pipelines. Some of our work on adaptation is also focused on a greater understanding of risk. And so you'll see more efforts on upstream multi-hazard, disaster and climate risk assessments. There's an interesting project that was approved in Bangladesh in 2022, which more work is being done on right now. That is the 22 Coastal Towns Initiative. Also, we did some multi-hazard and disaster risk assessment in Tonga and doing a similar work in the Cook Islands and Vanuatu right now. I had an interesting couple of questions in the last few days, and I just want to raise a point with you on the question of climate risk. It's very evident that we're going through a major change in climate. And I still feel that when we have this conversation with a lot of people, that there's an expectation that we are going to arrive at a new norm. And so we're just going to take the current skill set and everything that goes with it and apply it to a new future. And I think it's really important to understand from our perspective in the climate space, it's really that in our lifetime, in our children's lifetime, there's an unlikely that we will arrive at a new norm and that we will be in a process of continuous change. So when we consider adaptation and particularly risk in our investments. Also, we are doing a lot of engagement with the whole development of the Loss and Damage Fund at the global level. And one of the factors that maybe not reaching enough attention is how much future loss are we still continuing to contribute to with the investments we are making. So this kind of understanding multi-hazard risk, investing in space, to reducing the growth of future risk. Because I think in the Asia context, we have so many communities who will move from rural to urban settings and are moving into low-lying coastal areas, they're moving into future floodplains, etc. So that's something we are certainly considering in our adaptation considerations. ADB's action plan will share a lot of the future areas of work. We're doing a lot of technical assistance work. We have an instrument called the NDC Advance to help DMCs translate nationally determined contributions into investment pipelines. We've got about 20 countries we're supporting through that. Also some work on long-term strategies. And the various other efforts around energy transition. Also, one of the areas that I haven't mentioned so far is on the question of just transition. So how do we ensure that through these climate investments that nobody is left behind with just transition in relation to specific investments like the decommissioning of coal, but also in relation to national processes. If we look to a future decarbonized energy sector which closes coal mines, or we look to a decarbonized transport sector, what are all the skill sets that are no longer required? And so that sees the climate effort learning from a lot of the skills from social labor sectors. There's so much more I could talk about, and I'm going to stop, but just to touch some, I know you're always interested in the emerging areas. A lot of work going on in the whole question of climate-related disclosure reporting, how that links in with our financial reporting services and future auditing of the climate work around carbon emissions, risk, etc. Decarbonization of the transport sector, that scaling up of work in the urban areas, more work on the health, education and social sectors very much. But also what are the opportunities for public financial management instruments and the financial industry, both sovereign and non-sovereign, to really contribute to the climate agenda. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Noelle. Very much appreciative by the team, and we would like to thank you for the valuable insights in sharing ADB's initiatives to achieve the climate ambition. Moving on to Rustam. Can you share with us what initiatives ADB and especially its procurement department aims to promote sustainable public procurement in its operations?
Thank you, Gigi. Good morning to everyone. I'm very pleased to see so many participants of this BOF who are interested in this topic. And I honestly think this climate change agenda will be something all of us will be working for many, many years ahead together. That's why I will be sharing certain perspective from our procurement department, how we can cooperate, but also would like to hear your ideas, your feedback, how we can improve together. So I think what Noelle has explained, it's a broader agenda of ADB on how we are going to address climate change issues. But if we look at this from procurement perspective, I think there are many opportunities for us to contribute to this process through procurement exercise, right? Because sustainable public procurement has certain elements which are contributing to climate change mitigation and adaptation. Any project in ADB would require preparation of so-called strategic procurement planning documents. This is when the executing agencies will assess the market, they will identify who are potential market players, they will also develop different options on how to do the packaging, but this is not the end. What we are now trying to promote is to look at sustainable public procurement criteria, whether they could be included in the bidding documents. For now, we have only a placeholder in our standard bidding documents. We do not mandate it, but through that strategic procurement planning exercise, we would like to understand what is the overall environment in the country, what is the legal framework, what is possible and what is not possible or maybe not feasible to include. And then, if there is a good understanding that certain sustainability criteria could be included in the bidding document, we are happy to do so, right? When we are talking about sustainable public procurement, we are not only talking about the green procurement or environmentally friendly procurement. There are some other aspects like social and economic and institutional. Right? So we would like to see which one we could adopt in our bidding documents when the executing agencies conduct tenders and they assess capacity of suppliers or contractors in delivering services which will have more positive impact in covering those areas. What we are currently doing, it's basically twofold. One is to try introduce those sustainability procurement, sustainable procurement criteria in the bidding documents. It's basically confined to ADB operations, ADB portfolio. But we would also like to engage with other borrowers, firstly for us to learn what progress they have made in basically promoting climate change and sustainability in their agenda, and also provide whatever knowledge we have now, just sharing our experience. It's basically, we are as a channel of communication from the information we receive from one country to another country. Because some countries are more advanced in that, some are still at the very nascent stage of that, of those considerations. So this is a continuous process. So the two big areas, how we can help under our own ADB operations, and then how we can help countries to strengthen their system, because it's not only for ADB, it's for the entire country, right? If there is a robust system which can use those elements, it will bring more benefits for the entire country. In this respect, what we have done studies of the maturity, so to speak, of countries' framework in terms of sustainable procurement. We prepared so-called fact sheets for each of our borrowing countries. These are being now reviewed. We will have to agree with each country. Just they have to confirm that the information presented there is very accurate. It reflects the reality. And then we will publish all these fact sheets, basically for everyone who is interested to understand what is the situation in a particular country. They could have that information. That covers several aspects. Yeah, the legal framework, regulatory framework, what are the laws and regulations requiring specific consideration of sustainability, then institutional framework, what agencies are responsible for implementing that, are there the agencies or not, and so on. And that would basically give us an opportunity to continue a dialogue, because if countries have good progress in that area, they will be more open to include those sustainable public procurement criteria in our projects. And then, of course, we will closely monitor that, and Rowena probably will explain in more detail how this could be done, because one thing is we agree to use certain criteria in the bidding document. We basically concluded the tender, awarded contract is signed, but what is happening at the end? Because the impact will be manifested only after the contract is completed. And if one project has multiple contracts, of course it would be quite useful to see what impact has been achieved at the end of the project life. And since we are talking about sustainability, it doesn't end after 5 or 7 years when ADB project is completed. So there is a longer term impact. So therefore, we are also considering certain approaches like using the life cycle costing in different projects. Not everywhere it's possible, not easy, but where it's possible, we would like to look at that, the total cost of ownership and then disposal of the assets after, say, 20, 30 years. Normally, nobody looks at that at the contract award time. So we look at who are the bidders, who has offered the better quality and better price, but during, say, 20, 30 years, it's the borrower who will have to operate and maintain that asset, and then it has to be basically disposed at the end of the shelf life. There are many different kind of complications in that. It's quite difficult to estimate the cost of disposal, but this is something I think we all have to look at, because that also adds to sustainability in whatever infrastructure is being supported. From ADB side, we have also developed a training program. First, I will start with the guidance note on sustainable procurement. ADB was the first among multilateral development banks who has prepared a specific guidance note on sustainable public procurement. It is available on our website. We have published it in December 2021. Then other MDBs followed. And we also prepared training materials on sustainable public procurement. Several modules, I think it's 7 or 8 modules, which is quite detailed. We have completed the training of our procurement specialists so that they have a good understanding on how they should work. We are going to expand that training to wider population within ADB. And what is quite interesting, many countries with whom we are talking and they learn that we have these kind of materials, they would like to use those materials, of course, adapt them to their local context, but they want to use that to train their civil servants. So I think this is one very kind of positive outcome of our close collaboration. And actually, to be honest, when we were working on these training materials, we also used the lessons learned from different countries. So that will continue. And I hope with our other panelists, I hope they will share their experience and knowledge, and we will learn more, and we will make sure that this sustainability criteria are more and more often used in our projects. One maybe last point I wanted to make is about 20 days ago in Manila, ADB hosted MDB's heads of procurement meeting. So all heads of procurement of major multilateral banks, they were here in Manila, and during that event, a joint statement on sustainable procurement initiative was adopted. It is available on ADB website. Also, basically, it confirms MDB's commitment to work together in promoting sustainable procurement in our operations. But since we many of us have common clients, the same borrowers. It provides us an opportunity to work together within MDB community and work directly with the clients, basically to promote that agenda. This is maybe briefly what I wanted to share. And the very, very last point, maybe nobody noticed that, but we are also trying to contribute to sustainability and the climate change. If you have seen, we have not printed any hard copies of documents or programs, what we used to do. There were a bunch of documents there, and all participants first will go there, grab all this, and then in the end of the event, we will see them all lying somewhere on the table. So we stopped that. Everything is electronic. So all information about this BOF is available on ADB website. All materials from presenters will be also available. So we are trying to save paper to save environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rustam, for sharing your perspective on how to promote sustainable procurement in ADB's operation. Apart from the ADB website, they can see the agenda in their events app in your phone. Speaking about events air, you may want to raise your questions, and if you want to, please indicate the name to whom would you like to address the question. Moving on to Ms. Rowena, Attorney Rowena. Attorney Rowena is a strong champion of sustainable public procurement in the Philippines and working on scaling up the existing green public procurement roadmap for the Philippines. Could you please share the experience of the government of the Philippines in its journey to strengthen sustainable public procurement in the country?
Thank you, Gigi, and good morning, everyone. It's really an honor for me to be part of this discussion. Perhaps I can start by saying that just like ADB, government would like to lead by example. So from a governance point of view, we want to be able to strategically use public procurement as a lever for really improving and enhancing our efforts on climate mitigation and adaptation. I don't think there's any question to that as to how effective public procurement is, as it comprises about 15 to 20% of a green public procurement framework. But no matter how good your legal and policy framework, it really boils down to implementation. So I think I want to focus more on some of the observations and challenges or opportunities for improvement that we can work on. As they say, the devil is in the delivery. So I want to start first with the most important factor in terms of effectively and strategically implementing a green public procurement or sustainable public procurement policy in any government. And that would really cover the procurement officers on the ground. In the Philippines, and I suppose for most governments, procurement really is a transactional concept more than anything else. It's not often used as a lever or a strategy towards a secondary governmental objective like sustainable public procurement. And because it is more of a transactional mindset, there's also the compliance mindset. So if it's not something required, then I don't have to do it. Because it's not required, I need to make sure that if I were to include green criteria, for instance, because that is our entry point in pushing for sustainable public procurement in the Philippines to include environmental or green criteria, would I be at risk of audit if I include green specifications, which might be more expensive? Because there's that really thinking and perhaps general acceptance that if I buy green, then I'm buying more. So I'm not being more efficient when it comes to public spending. So because there are those fears, there really is quite a pushback coming from the practitioners on the ground. But we also have to recognize capacity. I would have to say that technical experts are already on the ground. You do have technical experts in transportation, in energy, across the departments of the Philippines or the ministries. But then it's also, it's one thing to be good at what you do, but it's quite another to actually put it in technical specifications. So you need to be able to provide that very practical support to the practitioners, because even if they know what they want, if they don't know how to write them, you won't be able to actually deliver any result. But because there's that pushback, it affects the second factor, which is the market operators. How do we ensure market readiness so that you don't limit competition? Because you need to understand that there should be effective competition in public procurement. So we don't want this to become a chicken and egg thing. If government will not push for demand, then suppliers will not be minded to deliver. So it's very critical to balance somehow what we can actually, what the market provide and what government would like to require from the market operators. Which leads me to a third aspect, which I think is also very critical, which right now we are refining because somehow this was not really covered in the policy framework that we had, which is effective monitoring. There's really data in disintegration such that we don't know where we are at, what we are doing, so how can we effectively plot where we need to be. And that's what we have been working on, and we very, very grateful that we do have the support of the ADB on this, because monitoring is very critical, not only to provide that feedback loop, but actually to increase the buy-in. Right now, we seem to be saying something everybody wants to hear. We want to be sustainable, we want to go green, but we don't know yet the impact of this. And I think monitoring the performance, not just, collating reports, monitoring the performance of the procuring entities would effectively and clearly identify the impact. And that's where we want to be. Because if there's really effective impact, then we can truly use this to align budget priorities, for instance, in terms of public procurement. Because currently, if I would reference the national budget, about 45% of the national budget would include public procurement, something that you would have to procure. So that's about 2 trillion pesos that you would have to procure. And if you have impact, clearly providing impact to to identified sectors, then budget priorities would naturally be aligned towards that. This is also the priority of the president in terms of ensuring sustainable practices in government as well as creating green jobs. So I think that would make sense. I will stop on that note. Thank you.
Thank you, Rowena, for sharing the experience from the government's perspective on its journey to strengthen sustainable public procurement. Moving on to our next two panelists. They represent the private sector and also have ample experience promoting sustainable procurement principles. Now, my question will be addressed to you both, Annabel and Antony. Could you please share your experiences in applying sustainable procurement criteria such as environmental, social, and governance, social inclusiveness, engagement with local communities, tendering and contract implementation based on your firm's experiences in developed and developing countries? May we start with Annabel?
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. As Gigi mentioned earlier, Ricardo is a global consultancy working across the energy and environmental value chain, and environmental, social and governance issues, ESG, are really at the heart of Ricardo's DNA. We're climate leaders, and through our sort of responsible business operations, we demonstrate results and data transparency both to our internal and external stakeholders. So just for an example, Ricardo is signatory to the UN Global Compact, and that allows us to disclose our responsible business practices in support of the UN's 10 guiding principles on human rights, labour, environment, anti-corruption, and of course the SDGs. And we actively address around 8 out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And we're shortly going to be publishing our first communication on progress report to demonstrate our net zero commitments. Ricardo also contributes to the Global Reporting Initiative standard on global sustainability reporting. So we provide advice both to public and private sectors on ESG and net zero pathways to meet decarbonisation targets, and we implement ESG for our own operations as well. So for example, we deploy a greenhouse gas data capture tool, and we adopt the Science Based Targets Initiative net zero standard. That's the SBTI is principally to reduce Scope 1 and 2 greenhouse gas emissions and also achieve Scope 3 CO2 reductions through our supply chain. And we've also achieved ISO 5001 for transparency and energy efficiency planning. I think of particular interest for this audience is social value, and that is something which is really important to the UK public sector customers. They're looking for a measurable social return from public money spent on contracts. And so many of you may be unaware that in the UK there's a minimum overall weighting for social value of 10% of the overall tender score, which is mandated by the UK government procurement, and that's across 5 key categories. So those are COVID-19 recovery, tackling economic inequality, through supply chain resilience, jobs and skills, fighting climate change, equal opportunity, so tackling workforce inequality, reduce disability employment gap, and also address the gender pay gap, and fifthly, well-being. And so in the UK, all the invitations to tender, requests for proposals, typically include 2 of these categories and ask for specific metrics to be addressed by the project outside the technical and commercial scope of work. And that's both for domestic and international official development assistance funded projects. And so Ricardo has sort of addressed that social value approach in the last few years. We've implemented a social value strategy. We have a core team to implement that strategy and dedicated intranet webpage for staff, monthly bulletins, tools and resources. So we sort of, as a supplier to the UK government and other customers globally, we sort of apply that social value strategy through initiatives like delivering work experience opportunities, particularly in science, technology, engineering and maths through STEM subjects, providing paid internships linked to guest lecturing at universities, mentorship support, practical volunteering, particularly to voluntary organisations and in support of environmental stewardship, and delivery of professional technical expertise, usually on a pro bono basis, to social enterprises. And a particular example I just wanted to share with you was we've recently been awarded by the UK government for the Lowering Emissions by Accelerating Forest Finance project, LEAF as it's known as. And one of the social value criteria for that project was tackling economic inequality. And so we're currently starting to deliver that contract, which is a 4-year contract. And so we're putting in place a roster of national experts working with Indigenous people and local communities, including small-scale farmers, for forest partnerships, and that's in countries globally across Latin America, Africa and Asia, where there is a forest industry. And we're also creating a library of materials on the Art Trees standard, which is the standard of measurement, reporting and verification of greenhouse gas emission reductions from deforestation practices. So we're planning to create peer-to-peer networks for technical mentoring. And so that's just a good example of an international ODA-funded project where we're applying social value principles, particularly in tackling economic inequality. Thank you.
Thank you, Annabel, for sharing that valuable insight. Now let's hear from Antony.
Is that working now? Yes, it is. Thanks, Gigi. Hello, I'm Antony. I work for Ramboll. Ramboll is a global engineering, architectural, management consulting firm. We were founded in Denmark just after the Second World War by two engineers who wanted to build back better, who wanted to build a more sustainable society with more sustainable infrastructure, and that desire to do better and to build a more sustainable world has been with us the whole way through. Of course, they didn't use the word sustainability back in the 1940s. Things have changed, but it's very, like many companies, it's very important to what we do these days. Now, being the last speaker on the panel, I wasn't exactly sure what everyone else would like to talk about, so I thought maybe I'll repeat what other people have said. So instead I'll talk about three case studies, I guess. First, talk a bit about a training and capability case study. Second, perhaps a concrete example from the energy sector. And thirdly, a little bit about innovation and how important that is for sustainable procurement. So firstly, training and capacity development. So in Denmark, we work extensively with an organisation called IKA, which is a member organisation for municipal governments across Denmark. So we work extensively with them, like some of the examples from earlier, building the competence and the capacity of procurement officers to understand and implement sustainability principles. And that's really important. So we teach them what sustainability is all about, what it means. So starting with perhaps the Brundtland Commission definition saying that we need to make sure we're providing for society's current needs without compromising needs of future generations. And we then work through the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We talk about triple bottom line, social, economic, environmental. But then what's really important is helping procurement officers understand what is important for their communities, what is important for the infrastructure projects or the new developments that they're working on. Because there is so many things we could be doing. What is important to understand is what is the specific objectives that we need to be focusing on. And that's really important. And building that knowledge and that experience and that expertise for procurement officers, as other speakers have said, is just so important to making this work. So secondly, perhaps let's move to the energy sector. And we work extensively in offshore wind across the world. And so this example is a case study with Hofor, so a global renewable energy utility. And they develop offshore wind farms across the world. And so we work with them on understanding their objectives. So it starts once again, what are their overall objectives as a company? What are they trying to achieve with offshore wind? What are their customers trying to achieve? What are their corporate social responsibilities? How can they improve sustainability? Is it something like having the energy transition? Is it something like thinking about low carbon options for getting workers to and from the platforms? Is it thinking about the blades on their turbines? How can we reuse? What are the circularity options for those? Is it thinking about how can we use nature-based inspiration to improve the designs of the piers on which these turbines sit? Or is it using low carbon concrete in construction? So these are some of the things that they need to understand, some of the objectives. And then they need to understand the impacts of these various actions. What is going to give the best return against their objectives for the capital or the resources invested. So there's a lot of work that goes into impact assessment to try and prioritise. But then it's really important to go through this engagement with the market and do that early. To use, I said it was a concrete example, so let's use the low carbon concrete as an example. They need to be speaking to concrete suppliers early on in the process to understand what are the options for low carbon concrete in this particular market. They need to then speak to structural engineers and understand what does that actually mean in terms of if you have low carbon concrete, how does that impact the structural design of the piers. They then need to understand how do you compare the various And so it's understanding how to work with the market, but it's also making sure you have the right expertise on your project team. All people that understand sustainability, understand what the objectives of the organisation are and pulling in the same direction to achieve it. So that's, I guess, a concrete example. Finally, I wanted to touch a little bit more on the development context about the importance of innovation. how important it is, if we want to achieve something better, that we are achieve something new, that we're trialling and giving opportunities for these solutions to be trialed. So at is managing this program. It's funded by the Australian government. And this program provides the opportunity to trial new smart city technologies in the urban context in 24 cities across Southeast Asia. And it gives us that opportunity to trial with ADB project officers, with local governments, with provincial governments, new ideas that can then be implemented in future loan projects, because it is very challenging when you're delivering a large infrastructure project to be trying new ideas for the first time. If you're trying to get contractors to sign up to risky projects with new ideas that have not been tested, it's just not going to work. And people have talked already on the panel about procurement as a model that really is trying to get the best outcomes once you get to contracting stage. So you need to give room for innovation up front, and I think that's really important. So some examples, we've been working with a city in Thailand, looking at how to best engage with vendors on smart city technology early on, creating a vendor playbook. This is the sort of knowledge product that's very transferable, then can be used by other cities in how to do that. We're working in the Philippines, in Davao, where ADB identify multiple vendors that can provide this service and then specify requirements that are such that you can actually create competition and then procure the right solution. So there's some real concrete examples that I think are very transferable, but it only happens if you have room for innovation, and in this context that often means having the right donor funds to be able to do that. So hopefully that's useful. Back to you, Gigi.
Thank you, Antony. Now I have several questions raised via Events app. Questions. To the ADB staff from Jesper Nordic Chamber of Commerce, Philippines, do you see ADB implementing a requirement for sustainability reporting for companies in general to be considered and on actual projects? Anybody from ADB?
Maybe I'll try to answer what we are doing in this area. Firstly, of course, this is a completely new aspect, which we have not been considering in the last few years, but we are looking into that. And maybe we could rephrase it, that we would like to better understand the supply chain, because we are mostly financing large infrastructure contracts, and there are international contractors participating from different countries. We would like to understand what are their supply chains, from where they source different materials, and how those materials are basically manufactured and produced. That's something we are still in discussion with the other MDBs, so I hope we will agree. We had several meetings with the contractors associations just to understand how they look at this matter, because the bigger is a contract, the more complex will be a supply chain. So we would like to understand how that works. As Antony mentioned, for example, the concrete, we are looking at so-called green cement, because this is something which is new in the market. And this is also low carbon cement, but it would be probably much higher price than compared to traditional Portland cement. Cannot be used everywhere. We have to understand the market. If we put this kind of requirement together with the borrower in the bidding documents, whether this will be encouraging factor or it will be discouraging factor. Because if in the country there are no manufacturers of that type of cement, or maybe only few, that could be a kind of restrictive factor. So before actually requiring contractors or bidders to basically report on their sustainability efforts, we first want to understand ourselves how that entire system works. And of course, eventually, once we get more information, we will update you on that.
Thank you, Rustam. I believe Noelle would like to say something. Okay.
Yes, I think just to add that this is a really rapidly evolving context. So one, even the sustainability reporting for the MDBs and what will be the implications for that in terms of our reporting under the US SEC, the Europeans, the evolving international financial reporting system. So that's rapidly evolving for us. That may come through to climate finance auditing, it may come through emissions-related auditing, climate risk, and obviously that is something then we will be benchmarked on against other MDBs, so that will, as Rustam has already indicated, have implications for multiple aspects across the bank. But also starting to look at what will be the demands on the DMCs for similar types of sustainability reporting. So just to note that. Thank you, Gigi.
Thank you, Noelle. 3 more questions about ADB. Does ADB procurement policy consider how the supplier is procuring energy?
This question is probably linked to the first one, right? The policy itself does not have such a requirement because it's a broader framework of basic principles. Economy, efficiency, fairness and transparency, quality and value for money. So when it comes to the last 2 core principles, quality and value for money, probably that question will be asked and we will have to look at that. But we do not have a very specific requirements for suppliers or for contractors to demonstrate what are the sources of the energy they produce. But again, this is linked to the supply chain, right? So if you're talking about that cement, so it requires energy, right, for manufacturing. But this is one aspect. Another aspect is in many projects, we are trying to promote, together with the borrowers, more energy-efficient technologies, water-saving technologies and energy-efficient technologies. And then, of course, we see responses from the market. Not for every type of equipment it's possible to achieve, or because there could be quite a big price gap between traditional equipment and the one which is more energy efficient. And then what we are trying to basically help, it's not just one-off exercise and see how it works, because it should be countries' kind of longer-term vision if they want to transition from one type of equipment to another. Doesn't make sense just to have it under one project. It should be in a much bigger scale. So that is closely linked to the government's development program. So if they have it in their agenda, then it will be much easier to implement, and it will send a basically provide this kind of goods and services. I'll stop here.
Another question. Is ADB doing something in relation to attract investor to power generation from wind, as carbon financing options are very limited for wind nowadays?
Sorry, I think that question relates to each of the DMCs and the transition to clean energy in each of those contexts, and what the preferences are for wind, whether it be either onshore or offshore. So we have the Lao wind investment is the most recent of the big investments, as far as I'm aware. In other contexts, the countries are choosing a mix of solar and various other kinds of renewables. So this is on a country-by-country context.
Yeah, maybe I would add a couple of words regarding that. So we are trying to, basically we're facilitating more financial resources. Then, of course, we will try to discuss with other multilateral development banks. We have many projects which are jointly co-financed. And the reason why they are jointly co-financed, because ADB confirmed its financing. So the other financiers are willing to participate in the same project because they know that ADB will do its oversight, will help with the feasibility studies and project implementation and so on. And this is on the sovereign field, but non-sovereign, of course, our private sector operations, they look at that.
Thank you, Rustam. And the last question is also for you. When do you think the Sustainable Procurement Country fact sheets will be issued? And do you see any problems agreeing the baselines with countries?
I cannot tell you exactly the exact date when they will be published, but it will happen. Firstly, we should understand that multiple countries, we are collecting data together with the government officials. We have to verify that. We do not want to present something which is different from the country itself presents, right? So it requires certain efforts to verify, but eventually I think every country will be happy to have that because it supports them. It shows, okay, maybe some countries have less progress than the others, but at least it shows that they're moving in that direction, and there will be more partners, I think, willing to help them improve in this area, because as I said right from the beginning, this climate change and sustainability topic will be with us for many, many years to come. I don't see any strong reason for countries to object to that.
Thank you, Rustam. Thank you, dear panelists, for sharing your valuable insights. May I request a round of applause for our dear panelists this morning. And round of applause also to you for the active participation. Thank you for raising the questions. Before we go on a break, I would like to take this opportunity, because I won't see you later as we close the event. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to you the team leader behind the success of this Business Opportunities Fair 2023. Let's give it up for none other than Rustam and his team. Thank you so much, guys. You did a great job. All right, so we will go now on a break, and I hope to see you at 10:30. Please come back at 10:30. We will have 3 parallel sessions in halls 2, 3, and 4, presenting thematic opportunities. Thank you, everyone, and see you at 10:30 here. May I request everybody to please don't leave any items in this auditorium, because we will be moving the venue, we will be splitting the venue into 3. Again, please don't leave any items, bags inside auditorium, because we will splitting this into 2. Thank you, everyone.